Hello everyone. A few words about how I approached this so far. I just asked ChatGPT to create for me lists of problems that I haven't done before are at the right level of difficulty and distributed across different topics. So I have finished the list of 10 problems that it gave me. It was kind of the right difficulty for me to be able to solve those in the end. But now I want to struggle a bit more. And I asked it to get me a list of 10 hard problems. So starting today, we'll be doing hard problems. Hopefully, they will still be reasonably solvable. I asked for easy hards, but let's see how it goes. And let me share my screen. Today will be the only day when I'm actually solving a problem that I have already solved before. It's text justification problem, and I have done it as either one of the first hards that I ever done, or maybe it's the first hard that I ever done several years ago. So yeah, it's actually not that hard, to be honest. It's just tricky to do correctly. So let's see. Let me set a timer. Okay. Signature. An array of string words. Oh, we're giving an array of string. Okay, so words is a list of strings. And then max width, which is an integer, formatted such that each line has exactly max width characters and is fully left and right justified. Okay. You should pack your words in a greedy approach. That is, pack as many words as you can in each line, but extra spaces when necessary so that each line has exactly max width characters. Extra spaces between words should be distributed as evenly as possible. If the number of spaces on a line does not divide any evenly between words, the empty slots on the left will be assigned more spaces than the slots on the right. For the last line of text, it should be left justified and no extra spaces inserted between words. A word is defined as a character sequence consisting of non-space characters only. Each word's length is guaranteed to be greater than 0 and not exceed max width. The input array word contains at least one word. Okay, there are good constraints that we are giving. So first of all, we don't need to worry about empty words. We also don't need to worry about words of length 0. And finally, we never have words that are longer than the string that we have. So that is also out of question. So it's basically just correctly calculating the number of spaces to put between words and yada, 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 and like how many words to add, which is reasonably easy to do. I'm just thinking about how exactly do I want to do that, but first let me figure out. So I think I need format the text. So I'm assuming that we should be just returning the string where we use this backward slash sign n for the new line. So let's say that we have words A, B, and C. Let's do something more interesting. A cat on a mat. These are the words. Obviously, they're separated by commas, but doesn't matter much. So we have, let's say, the length max width is 3, right? So if max width is 3, then a cat on a mat will be our justified text. let's say it's 4, it will be a little bit different. A cat on a mat. Now let's say it's 5, then it will be a cat on a mat. And just for the sake of it, let's choose something more interesting. Let's say, what would be more interesting? 8, because then it will be a bit different. Oh no, actually, I was wrong here. So here we need to do our text justified, so we made a mistake here. Yeah, no, this is correct, and this is important. Let's actually do for 6, because then it will also change how we are justifying the text. So it will be a cat on a mat. Okay, and if it's 7, I just want to get the fitting of the problem. It will be a cat, but on doesn't fit, so it will be a and then cat on a, no, on a mat. Yeah, okay. I think I have an idea of how to solve this problem, so let's talk about the solution. So first, split into lines. And this operation will be, let's say that n is length of words. So if we want to split into lines, it will be of let's say m is just total pictures. I'm not sure if I will need this, but just in case. So for length of words, it will be of an operation. Second, calculate spaces. Then write lines. So basically create strings of lines. These will be let's say that m is length of word. So we have n words and each is on average of length m. Then write lines will be yeah, I think it will be total characters that we are using. We will be joining the array, but the operation itself will be of m times n. Yeah. And then finally combine lines into text. And it will also be of mn. So that's depending on how exactly we are combining several words in one line. So if there is if this operation combines strings in of one time for each string, which is, yeah, it doesn't do that. Combining strings takes more than that. So yeah, of mn would be the correct thing here. And now finally, let's do the implementation. Maybe let me mark for myself some of the corner cases that I want to process correctly. Cases. First, one word in a line. Second, last line. And third, which is kind of an obvious thing, but unevenly distributed spaces. Okay. Yeah, maybe I should also count the number of spaces. Like, can the number of spaces be much bigger than the number of characters and words? No, it will be on the same order of magnitude. So it will be still of mn, even if the number of spaces is relatively large or relatively small. Implementation. Let's do that. Okay. First, let's do maybe a sub-function. Let's call it f split words into lines, and we are giving word which is a list of strings, and we are returning list of strings. So we will be using this function first. Lines will be equal self. Oh yeah, I forgot self here. Self split words into lines, words. Okay, now let's actually implement this function. So lines will be a list, and let me also have max width self max width equals none. Now I want to be a little bit more careful. Ideally, we would like to define this solution class, and here define the max width, and then create a fully justified list of for characters. But for now, we will just do self max width equals max width, because we'll be reusing this in different sub-functions that we have. So first, let's split words into lines. Lines is this, and then current line equals this. Current line char count is 0. For word in words, if current, if not current, so if current line is empty, then we are just adding word to this current line, because nothing can happen. Current line append word. This word will always be shorter than the max width of characters, and it will always fit, basically. So now okay, actually I'm thinking whether it should be for word in words. Yeah, I think I don't want this to be for word in words. I want maybe sometimes several loops to point at the same word. So I is equal to 0, while I is smaller than length of words. Words I. Okay, and what else do we need to do? We need to say that plus equals length of words I. Okay, and in such case, we do I plus or equals 1. So we move to the next word, and that's it, right? But let's do else. So here, there are two possible scenarios. Either we fit in the current line or we don't. So if we fit in the current line, if current line character count plus length of words I, this is just the length of the word, but we also need to add a space in the end, right? Plus 1, or not in the end of the previous sequence of words that we had, and now the new word. So it's at least that. And if it's smaller or equal to max width, self max width, then we are adding this word to the current line. So we append it here. And we also do this, but also plus 1, because we also have a space now. Okay, now else, and this is why I created a while loop. What I want to do, okay, here I am moving my pointer towards by 1. I'm now thinking whether I should just implement this as a simpler, less in smaller thing. So yeah, a simpler conditional. So if we don't have a line, then if we do have a line, but we have the new word that we can add there, that is fine. But if we have a line and we cannot add the word there, then we are doing the next thing, which is like updating the line. So lines append current line, and now current line is equal to empty list, and current line character count is 0. Okay, so now we are returning lines, and I think that is correct. Here we are not increasing our pointer because we exactly want this word to be processed, and it's processed only in these two conditions. In these two conditions, we are not processing the word, we are processing the line. Okay, now this is good. Let's continue. So we have lines. Now, let's just do written lines equals self, right? Yes, I need to write function write lines, because there we will also have conditional given if the line is the first one, like in somewhere in at the start of the text, or if it's the last line, and it's not independent processing of all lines. So I will write a function self write lines of lines, and now let's actually define this function. So define write lines, where we are getting lines, which is a list of strings, and we are guaranteed that each of these lines is printable by how we have created those. So write lines, and we are returning a list of strings. So this will be already joined words with specific number of spaces in between them. Okay, so then for I line in enumerate lines, if I doesn't equal length of lines -1, this is the normal path, and otherwise we are justifying the final line. Okay, so I'm thinking about an elegant solution for writing lines. Yes, let me define another function. So for now, let's leave it be. So define combine words and spaces. So what I want to do is I want to just write my lines and add the correct number of spaces between words. So it will be words, it will be line. I have spent 20 minutes. Let me spend 20 more. Combine words and spaces. So I'm trying to figure out what is the nice API here, because I will be using it for different cases. Okay. Okay. Line, which is a list of strings, then default spaces, which is integer, then residual spaces, which is an integer, and I'm returning a string. So the idea here is that for each line we have some total number of characters. Then I'm just trying to figure out where should I put this calculations. Should I put them in right lines here? Should I put them outside? Should I put them inside of here? Should it be just line? And yeah, let's do it differently. Let's do justify boolean, which is equal to true. So by default we are justifying but in the end we are left justifying. Let's say text by default, otherwise left justify. Okay, so now let's say how many characters do we have? How many spaces do we have? We have default spaces. Total spaces equals to. Should I actually start the count? No, let me just calculate the count. So total chairs. I have already calculated this before, but calculating this again doesn't change the complexity of my solution. Maybe that I can also store in my lines both the words and the total character count. Okay, I have not actually calculated this. Yeah, I don't want to be worried about this right now. So total characters will be sum of length of word for word in line. This will be the total number of total number of character, total spaces is self max width minus total characters. And then there is default spaces, which is total spaces divided by length of line minus 1. So length of line is the total number of words in the line. How many okay, yeah, there is also this corner case if the line is just one word. Yeah, let's do it here. If length of line is equal to 1, then we just do spaces equals self max width num spaces total spaces self max width minus length. Okay, word equal line pop self max line minus length word. And return word plus space times total spaces. So that's what we are returning if we have a line that is of length 1. Otherwise, we need to calculate how many spaces are we adding. So default spaces is this. So that's like the floor for the calculation where we divide the total number of spaces by the number of slots for spaces. But now we also need to calculate residual spaces, which is total spaces minus default spaces times length of line minus 1. Yep, so we now find how many spaces are the default ones, and then we calculate how many spaces do we still need to add to the first slots for after we have already added the default spaces, but we will be I'm thinking about how to process the last line. Yeah, so we will be removing one residual space every time when we are adding this until we get to 0. So then if not justify, it means that that's the last line, and the last line let's say we only have default spaces equals 1, residual spaces equals 0. So if we are justifying left, we will always have just one space between the words. So now words and spaces is equal to an empty list. I do this because I don't want to do of n squared kind of operations if we are adding piece by piece to the string. We just want to add all the pieces and then in one operation combine all of those together. So words and spaces. What we are doing here is for word in line, I'm also thinking about the last word. So in line up to -1. Let me just right away do words and spaces, append line -1. So we only need to do operations for spaces after each of the words, but the last word we are just adding in the end. And now we do spaces for word is equal to default spaces. If residual spaces is bigger than 0, then we still have residual spaces to distribute. So we will do spaces for word plus or equal to 1 and this minus equal to 1. And then words and spaces append word, and then words and spaces append space times spaces for words, for word. Okay, so now words and spaces append line -1, yes, and then we do that, and then finally we do return this. We just join our words and spaces. Okay, so we have joined it. Now we need to finally process it differently. So if it's not the last line, then written line will look like self combine words and spaces offline. Else, and yeah, we need to append it. So write lines written lines is empty, but now we are appending it here. Append written lines. Okay, we can do it just once for both of these options. And in this case, written line will be just the same thing, but justify will be equal to false. If it's the last line, we don't justify it, we justify it left. Okay, and now finally, written lines are here. Return this join written lines. Okay, we are done with the code in 33 minutes. Let's check that we have covered our corner cases. So one word on a line, just one word on a line. Yes, we have processed this. If it's the last line, yes, we have processed it here separately and also here. Now, what if we have unevenly distributed spaces? Yes, that's exactly the kind of thing that we are processing here. So might be that we need to create more subfunctions because some of those are relatively long, but overall it's reasonable, the structure of the code. Let me just quickly go through that with an example so that I can check if it actually works. So let's do this one. Get on a mat of 6. So we get on the mat of 6. First of all, we go to lines, split word into lines. We start with empty lines, but then we start the first line. While I is smaller the length of words, current line doesn't exist, so we just add a. Then current line character count becomes length of words. Okay, so it becomes 1. And we iterate to the new word. Now I will be equal to first word, so it will be a cat. A plus cat plus 1 is 5, so it's smaller, so we just add it here. And we iterate to the next word, which is a cat on. On becomes like, right now the total current line character count is 5. And if we add on, which is plus 3, it will be bigger than 6, which is max 5. So we are not adding it here. We are actually instead removing ending the line, appending it, and creating a new one. And now here we will add on. Okay, on a, and again we will be moving to the next one, mat. Okay, that's just fine. Then we're returning this combination. So then we will have a cat on a mat. Let's just see how one of those things will work here. For example, combine words and spaces. So we will pass the line a cat. Total characters will be 4. Total spaces will be 6 minus 4, so 2. Default spaces will be 2, and then residual spaces will be 0. So then words and spaces is here. And what are we doing first for word and line? Yes, all the words until the last one. So first it will be a. We'll be adding a, and then we will be adding spaces multiplied by the number of spaces. Default spaces is 2 and residual spaces is 0. So we are appending this, and then we just append the last piece, the last word in the line, and then we join it and return it. So it will be exactly what we want. So write lines, written line will be, the first one will be a cat joined. Then we will do the same thing on a, because there will be 3 spaces. And then finally for the last word, it will be just length of line is equal to 1. So word is line pop, and total spaces. Yeah, actually, I don't know what exactly we should do for the last line. Should it just be, it should be left justify and no extra spaces inserted between words. That's fine. But do we need to insert those last spaces so that it's like the whole line, the whole line of length? Or maybe we don't need to add these spaces in the end. So then currently we are adding spaces in the end, but we can easily not do that, but it would require changing the logic. So I don't know how this can work. Let's maybe look at the example. Oh yeah, we are adding spaces in the end. That's fine. Cool. Then let's just see if our implementation works. Solution takes one position. Okay, I have forgotten a self somewhere, didn't I? Yeah, in many places, in many places. Can only join an iterable. Oh yeah, I forgot to return here. Return lines. Let's and oh, I thought that we need to add this. Okay, so we don't need this. We don't need to create at least combination of this. So I think now that should be correct. Okay. So I'm not adding the last line, right? So in each of those cases, I'm just not adding the last line. What the hell is going on? Am I not even creating this last line? Yes, I'm not even creating this last line. For the last line, I also need to do lines append current line. Okay. Another issue. Justification shall be. Oh, I'm actually not adding this in the end. I thought I am. I thought I am adding. Oh, okay. Okay, so I need to rethink how I process. So basically, if I have one word in the last line, I'm adding all of those spaces. But if I just have several words in the last line, I need to process it differently. So if not justify, okay, result equals this. If not justify, and this is becoming ugly. If not justify, result plus equals self max width times minus length of result times space result. Okay. Nice. That was accepted. Well, we have spent 40 minutes trying to solve this hard problem, which is not hard, but obviously I also have missed at least one corner case that I have misunderstood about how my code is implementing this, and a few sloppy mistakes, starting with something like missing self, which is okay-ish, but not forgetting to return things from the function is worse. And maybe it should be like a checklist of what I should check whenever I write those functions. And missing the corner case scenario is even worse than that. Still, a tricky problem, very hard to implement in 20 minutes, but possible to implement in 40. Okay, I think that's it for today. See you all later, some other time. Bye.